Revenge films.
My name is Samantha. I'm 26 years old and work full-time at a large furniture company. I currently live alone, but until a year ago, I was living with my fiancé. My fiancé, John, and I had been together since high school, and our families had a great relationship. We got along with each other's parents really well, and after John graduated from college, he started working at my father's company as a businessman, thanks to some connections. Everyone thought we were headed for marriage, but things ended unexpectedly. When I was 24, John proposed to me, and we started making plans for our wedding. However, because we were both so busy with work, we grew apart, and before we knew it, a year had passed since the engagement. We were finally ready to pick a date and start planning the wedding, but just as we were about to move forward, John suddenly said,
"We need to talk."
John then nervously said,
"I want us to break up."
I thought he was joking at first, but when he insisted, saying,
"I'm serious."
He revealed a shocking truth. The reason for the breakup was that he had been cheating on me, and the person he cheated with? My own sister, Nora. I remember feeling completely numb in that moment. Nora, my younger sister by 2 years, had always been considered beautiful and was praised for it as she grew up. Because of that, she became increasingly convinced that she was special and would throw a tantrum if things didn't go her way. As she got older, she became the kind of person who couldn't stand not being the center of attention, and as an adult, she turned into a kind of man-eater, stealing other people's boyfriends. Back in high school, this behavior made her unpopular, and she had no friends. But Nora didn't care about that at all, and she was partying and swapping boyfriends every other day without a second thought. After entering the workforce, Nora started dating only rich men, and when she grew bored of them, she'd discard them like it was nothing. About a year ago, the heir to a major corporation, who had been dumped by Nora after being deceived by her, came to our house to ask for the spare key he had left with her. He wanted it back. At that time, my parents and I had to apologize to him repeatedly, bowing our heads until we finally convinced him to forgive her. Although Nora had flirted with John after I started dating him, I always believed he wasn't the type to fall for something like that. But I never imagined in a million years that just before our wedding, my sister would steal him away. The shock was so overwhelming that I fell into a deep depression for a while. After John broke up with me, he quickly packed his things and moved out of the apartment we were living in. Then he cut off all contact. A week after the breakup, as I was crying every day, my sister came to see me. I was lying in bed, unable to do anything, when the doorbell suddenly rang. I thought it was John coming back, so I rushed to open the door, only to find Nora standing there. She wasn't even slightly remorseful. With a smile, she said, "John apparently left something behind, so I came to pick it up." At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to slap her, but I held myself back when I yelled, "How could you steal my fiancé away? That was the lowest!" Nora just shrugged and replied, "Well, what can I say? I'm way more beautiful than you are. Anyone would be drawn to me, obviously." Then, without me even asking, she started telling me the story of how she and John had gotten together. Apparently, they exchanged their phone number when John came to my parents' house to announce our engagement. After that, Nora repeatedly flirted with him until they ended up meeting alone. Nora saw it as an opportunity and used her charm to seduce him and successfully invited him to a hotel. From there, John became more and more infatuated with her, and it seems he decided to break up with me. I listened for a while, but I couldn't take it anymore. I forced her out of the house. Then I blocked both Nora's and John's number and swore to never have anything to do with them again. I realized that wasting time being sad over them was pointless, so I returned to work the next day and started regaining my normal life. I also told my parents everything and made it clear that I had definitively broken up with John. My parents were furious with both Nora and John, and they wanted to call them in for a talk, but I didn't want that. To me, they were both strangers now, and I didn't want either of them stepping foot in our family home. After that, I threw myself into my work and grew into someone the company could rely on. A year after the breakup, the wounds had healed, and I was living a fulfilling life again. One day, out of the blue, Nora, who had been out of touch, showed up at my office. After breaking up with John, I moved right away and didn't share my new address with anyone, so she had to come all the way to my workplace to find me. As soon as I walked out of the office, she grabbed me and suddenly said, "Hey, sis! I'm getting married to John. We're going to have a gorgeous wedding, so you have to come." I couldn't believe she was telling me this. I thought to myself, how could she even say that? But I just said, "Good for you, but please don't come here anymore. It's a bother." Nora fired back. "What's with that attitude? You're still hung up on him, aren't you?" When I tried to ignore her and walk away, she said, "I went to the house, but the door was locked and no one was home, so I came here. Can you tell Mom and Dad and the relatives about the wedding? The invitations will be sent out next week." Then she added, "All the relatives are giving me $2,000 as a wedding gift. You can give me $7,000 if you want." I replied coldly, "Do you even have any relatives?" She was taken aback and said, "Huh? What are you talking about? Dad, Mom, you, and all the other relatives are around." So I said, "Got it. I'll let those people know about the wedding gifts." Then she seemed satisfied before leaving. The day of the wedding arrived. I had to visit my parents' house for something, and while I was talking to them in the living room, I suddenly heard Nora's voice outside. "Hey! I know you're in there! I can see your car! Open the door!" she yelled. Reluctantly, my parents and I went outside to meet her, and she was frantic, saying, "It's my wedding today! What are you doing here?" My dad responded,
Well, it's perfect timing. We needed to talk about John. He's been demoted and will be reassigned at the end of this month.
Nora stared at us wide-eyed, saying, "Huh?" Then my mother sharply replied, "Wedding gifts of $2,000 each, huh? Who in their right mind would give that much to strangers? We are not going to some random person's wedding." Nora, stunned, burst into tears. "How could you say that? Why would you say such a thing? Dad and Mom?" Then my father delivered the final blow.
Someone who betrays their family and hurts them is not our daughter.
Nora cried. "Without the wedding gifts, we can't afford the wedding. We have to pay $56,000 for it." Then, turning to me, she added, "It's your fault for telling the relatives about how John dumped you. You're just jealous because you're not as happy as me." At that moment, I decided to reveal something important. The truth was, right after I broke up with John, I happened to run into my sister's ex-boyfriend, the heir to a major company, at a work drinking party. Still heartbroken, I shared with him what Nora had done to me, and he listened intently, comforting me. That's how we ended up getting together. I was visiting my parents to introduce him to them that day. I told Nora this, and then went to get my boyfriend from the living room. When I brought him out, Nora gasped in disbelief. "No way! What the—" After my parents forcibly kicked Nora out, she stormed off, crying, "You're the worst! Give me the damn wedding gifts!" Later, Nora and John couldn't afford the extravagant wedding they had planned. They had to cancel their honeymoon and ended up drowning in debt. It turned out that Nora had always intended to steal John away from me, knowing full well he wasn't wealthy, and she only took him from me because she thought he might be useful in some way. John, who was never wealthy to begin with, was demoted and saw his income shrink. He was forced to live a modest life in a rural area. Nora, unable to live on her own, had no choice but to follow him there. Completely cut off from the rest of the family, with no one else to rely on, they both had to take on multiple part-time jobs just to pay off their debts. As a result, they hardly spent any time together, and their marriage grew cold. However, they couldn't afford to live apart, so they continued to live together, fighting all the while. As for me, right after I completely cut ties with Nora, my boyfriend proposed to me, and we decided to get married. Thanks to marrying someone who was wealthier than John, but more importantly, kind and loving, I was able to completely forget about the past. I'm sure my husband would never fall for Nora, but just to be safe, I made a vow to myself to never have anything to do with her again.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.